Jey Uso just became the villain he swore he'd never be. Jey Uso attacked an innocent wrestler backstage on SmackDown last night in a vicious assault that has the entire locker room questioning whether the man who spent years being abused by Roman Reigns has now become exactly like his abuser. The attack was unprovoked, brutal, and completely out of character for someone who's built his entire post-bloodline identity on being the good guy who finally escaped Roman's toxic influence. And now Jey's actions have wrestlers asking, did he really escape Roman's manipulation, or did he just absorb it? This wasn't a heat-of-the-moment reaction during a match. This wasn't retaliation for being attacked first. This was Jey Uso hunting down a wrestler backstage and delivering a beating so vicious that security couldn't pull him off and the victim had to be taken to the hospital with potential serious injuries. The same Jey who fans cheered for finally standing up to Roman's abuse just became the abuser himself and nobody saw it coming. But here's what makes this absolutely shocking: the victim of Jey's attack has no connection to the bloodline drama. No history with Jey. No reason to be targeted. This wasn't Jey going after Roman or Solo or someone who's wronged him. This was Jey attacking someone who was simply in the wrong place at the wrong time when Jey snapped. That randomness is what has the SmackDown locker room terrified. If Jey can attack someone for no reason, who's safe? Hit that like button and subscribe to Wrestling News CC because I'm about to break down exactly what happened in this shocking attack, why Jey's actions have destroyed his babyface credibility, and why the entire SmackDown roster is now looking at Jey Uso completely differently after watching him become the very thing he fought so hard to escape. Let me walk you through this nightmare because the details make it even more disturbing. SmackDown is underway, normal show with various segments happening. Backstage, cameras catch Jey Uso walking through the corridor with his gym bag, nothing unusual, just Jey heading to his locker room or wherever he needs to be. Then Jey stops. He's standing outside one of the production areas, and through the door you can hear someone inside laughing, just casual conversation and laughter from wrestlers hanging out before their segments. Normal backstage behavior that happens at every show. But something about that laughter triggers something in Jey. His expression changes. His jaw clenches. His fists tighten. And before anyone realizes what's happening, Jey kicks open the door and storms into the room. Inside is Apollo Crews, a wrestler who's been with WWE for years, generally well-liked, has zero history of conflict with Jey or the bloodline. Apollo's mid-conversation with a producer when Jey enters, and his initial reaction is friendly, "Hey Jey, what's up?" Because why would he expect aggression from someone he has no beef with? Jey doesn't respond. He just attacks, grabs Apollo and slams him into the wall. Then starts throwing punches, not worked wrestling punches, but stiff closed-fist shots that look genuinely violent. Apollo tries to defend himself, but he's caught off guard and Jey is in full berserker mode. The producer in the room tries to intervene, and Jey shoves them away so hard they crash into equipment. Then Jey goes back to Apollo, picking him up and power-bombing him through the craft services table. Glass and food go everywhere. Apollo is hurt, not selling, actually injured from going through a table he didn't expect to go through. Security rushes in, 3 guards trying to pull Jey off Apollo. Jey fights them off, throwing elbows and headbutts to anyone trying to stop him. It takes 5 security guards to finally restrain Jey and drag him away while he's still trying to get back to Apollo, screaming incoherently about respect and being disrespected. Medical staff immediately attends to Apollo, who's bleeding from cuts caused by the glass and holding his back from the unexpected table bump. He's eventually loaded onto a stretcher and taken to a local hospital for evaluation of potential serious injuries including possible concussion and back trauma. The entire backstage area is stunned. Wrestlers come out of their locker rooms asking what happened. Production staff are trying to figure out what triggered Jey. And Apollo Crews, who did nothing except exist in a room where people were laughing, is on his way to the hospital because Jey Uso had a psychotic break. Here's why this is so shocking and devastating for Jey's character. For the past year, Jey's entire storyline has been about escaping Roman's toxic influence, about breaking free from the abuse, the manipulation, the psychological control that Roman exercised over him, about becoming his own man who doesn't have to hurt people just because someone more powerful tells him to. Fans were invested in Jey's journey. They cheered when he finally stood up to Roman. They supported him rebuilding his career and identity outside the bloodline's shadow. They wanted to see Jey succeed as a babyface who earned respect through talent and character rather than through fear and violence. And now, Jey just proved that maybe he didn't escape Roman's influence. Maybe Roman's years of conditioning worked so effectively that Jey can't function without resorting to violence when he feels disrespected or threatened. Maybe Jey absorbed Roman's worst qualities without even realizing it. That's tragic character development if it's intentional. But if it's not intentional, if this is just WWE booking Jey to do something shocking without considering how it contradicts everything they've built with his character, then it's just bad storytelling. The locker room reaction is reportedly a mixture of shock and fear. Shock because nobody saw this coming from Jey. Fear because if Jey can snap and attack someone with no provocation, then everyone is potentially at risk when they're backstage. Multiple wrestlers have apparently expressed concern to management about their safety around Jey. There's talk of some refusing to be in segments with him until WWE clarifies whether this is a character turn or an actual concerning behavioral issue. Apollo Crews is said to be furious not just about being injured, but about being used in an angle where he got legitimately hurt without proper communication or protection. Sources say Apollo had no idea this attack was happening and took the table bump unprotected because he wasn't prepared for it. That's dangerous and unprofessional. If this was a planned segment, Apollo should have been told so he could protect himself properly. If it wasn't planned and Jey went into business for himself, that's even worse and should result in serious consequences. Let's talk about what this means for Jey's character going forward. If this is a heel turn, it's potentially the worst executed turn in recent memory because it requires Jey to abandon everything that made fans support him and essentially become a villain for no clear reason beyond he snapped. If this is supposed to show Jey has PTSD or psychological damage from his years under Roman's control, then WWE needs to commit to that story and not just use it as an excuse for shocking violence without follow-through. If this is setting up Jey versus Apollo as a feud, it's built on a foundation of one-sided violence that makes Jey look like a bully rather than a complex character dealing with trauma. None of these options are particularly good for Jey's character or career trajectory. Here's what should happen as consequences. WWE should have Jey suspended for this attack. Not kayfabe suspended, actually written off TV for a few weeks while they figure out what the story is here. That creates consequences for Jey's actions and gives time to properly build whatever direction they're taking this. When Jey returns, he should be forced to explain his actions. Not vague promos about you wouldn't understand, actual character work exploring why he attacked Apollo and what's going on in his head. That creates investment in Jey's psychology rather than just, he's crazy now, accept it. Apollo should get revenge or at minimum a public apology that acknowledges he was an innocent victim of Jey's issues. That respects Apollo as a character and doesn't just make him a throwaway victim in someone else's story. But knowing WWE's track record, they'll probably just move on next week with minimal explanation, expecting fans to accept that Jey is different now without doing the work to make that character evolution make sense. The fan reaction has been overwhelmingly confused and negative. Social media is flooded with questions. Why did Jey attack Apollo? Is this a heel turn? Is Jey supposed to be sympathetic or villainous? What was the point of this attack? The lack of clear answers is creating frustration rather than intrigue. Fans aren't excited to see where this goes. They're annoyed that WWE did something shocking without apparent purpose or planning. My prediction? WWE will reveal that Jey overheard Apollo and the producer talking about him or the bloodline in a way Jey perceived as disrespectful, even though it was innocent conversation. That creates a thin justification for the attack while establishing that Jey is now hypersensitive to perceived disrespect, a trait he learned from Roman. That leads to a short feud between Jey and Apollo where Apollo tries to get revenge but ultimately Jey goes over because WWE views him as more valuable long-term. The attack gets treated as a misunderstanding that's resolved through violence, and we move on without actually addressing the deeper character issues this raised. That's the easy way to handle this, but it's not the right way. The right way would be committing to exploring how Roman's abuse damaged Jey psychologically and now he's struggling to function without falling back on the violent patterns Roman ingrained in him. That's compelling storytelling that respects everything they've built with Jey's character, but it requires commitment and careful writing that WWE hasn't shown consistent ability to deliver. Drop your thoughts. Is Jey's attack a heel turn or a psychological breakdown? Did Apollo deserve an explanation or preparation before being attacked? And can Jey's character recover from becoming the thing he fought so hard to escape? Comments below. This is Wrestling News CC, demanding WWE actually explain their shocking moments instead of just doing them for shock value. Subscribe for coverage of whether this attack leads anywhere meaningful or just becomes another forgotten shocking moment. Jey Uso attacked Apollo Crews brutally and without provocation. The SmackDown locker room is shocked and scared. And Jey's entire post-Bloodline character arc just got complicated by him displaying the exact violent behavior he was victimized by for years. This is either brilliant character work showing how abuse creates cycles of violence or it's terrible booking that contradicts everything WWE has built with Jey. Time will tell which one it is. But right now, the SmackDown locker room is looking at Jey Uso very differently, and not in a good way. Hashtag Jey Uso, hashtag WWE, hashtag SmackDown, hashtag Apollo Crews, hashtag shocking attack.